the most important things that Democrats in Indiana can do is be loud and proud. And I'm not saying be annoying. You don't have to have a let's go Joe Biden flag in the back of your truck, but don't back down from it. Don't be afraid to tell people I'm a Democrat and I'm proud of it, because there are probably Democrats listening to you say it and you don't realize it and they don't realize. And so when you say it, there's that moment. I can't tell you how many times, how many people were so happy when you'd say, I'm the Democrat running for me state senate.
Right.
Oh, there's a Democrat. And it was so exciting.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Wilson, and you're listening to What the Gerrymander, our podcast about reclaiming and rebuilding our collective political power in MAGA-captured states. Today, we'll be talking to Josh Lowry, who ran for Indiana State Senate this fall as a lawyer, former assistant attorney general, and foster parent. Josh and his wife, Alexis, who is running for city council in Westfield, Indiana, have fostered 11 kids, 4 of whom they adopted. When he's not driving one of his children to practice or work, or knocking on doors for Alexis, Josh is a competitive natural bodybuilder and plays recreational soccer. Today, we discussed recent legislation proposed in the Indiana state legislature that limits the freedom of trans children to socially or medically transition, requires teachers to out trans kids to their parents, and makes it harder for Child Protective Services to remove kids from abusive situations. If you live in Indiana, we're talking about legislation that will directly apply to Hoosier kids. If you live in another MAGA-captured red state, your legislature is likely debating the same issues because they come straight out of the dark money-funded culture war playbook MAGAs are deploying across the country. And if you live in a blue state, please consider adopting Indiana or another MAGA-captured state to help contest every seat and roll back the autocracy happening in front of our eyes. A $20 recurring donation to HVA will help us to start Blue Indiana and fund every single legislative candidate. Our wide-ranging conversation today not only talked about the bills up in Indiana's General Assembly, but how Democrats can change the minds of the people around us by showing up and proving that we can be good people too. Take a listen and let us know what you think by rating us and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Welcome, Josh Lowry. So good to talk to you. And I see that you are wearing a t-shirt. You want to tell us about that?
Yes. So everyone, this is Alexis Lowry, my wonderful wife. She is running for Westfield City Council, District 4. Her and then Gary Lane, who's also running for at-large, are the first 2 Democrats to run for city council in Westfield since 2006. And the first time since we became a city in 2008. So this is a big deal. She is also the only woman running for city council, period, Republican or Democrat, this year. So I'm very proud to support her. I think you guys all like her just as much as I do.
Everybody, if you are in Westfield, you better be voting. There's a lot going on in Indiana right now and across the country, particularly with regard to what people have named the hashtag slate of hate. There's a lot of anti-transgender bills, particularly targeting transgender youth. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's going on in the State House and what these bills would mean for transgender and genderqueer kids in Indiana?
Yeah, so it's a full-on onslaught. They're not even the Republicans. The Republicans in the General Assembly. They're not even trying to hide the ball anymore. It's full on. And a lot of this goes from, I think, last year when they were able to ban abortion and they didn't face any repercussions at the ballot. And then they've also seen how popular, Ron DeSantis has been in Florida. And so you're seeing a lot of that legislation here, but there's a lot. We have our own version of the Don't Say Gay bill, the same thing that they passed in Florida. We have just today, there was a lot of testimony. They're trying to pass a bill that would ban gender affirming care. And then also things like there would be a requirement that DCS can't remove a child from a home because their parents don't agree with the their gender choice. And then also another one is with the Don't Say Gay bill, they've lumped in a thing where if a child wants to identify by a different pronoun, the teacher is required to notify their parents, whether the child wants their parent to be notified or not. And those are just the main ones. There's a whole lot more, but I mean, that is the ones that are catching everybody's headlines. They have testimony against these things and nobody's in favor of them, and yet they're still ramming them through.
And I don't think that many people realize that the people who are testifying on behalf of these bills go from state to state to state and testify. They have the same dozen people who go and testify in front of different state houses. And in fact, 94% of kids who transition are very happy with it. And another 2% stay non-binary. And it's only a very, very, very small percentage that regret transitioning. Can this bill stop that? Can it force them off of these treatments?
That's my understanding of the way the bill is drafted. Now, I think there would definitely be some lawsuits, and I think they would have a decent chance of prevailing because you're now messing with somebody's medical care that's already been decided. But my understanding of the bill is a complete ban, whether it's already happened or not.
Across the country, an LGBTQ kid tries to commit suicide every 45 seconds. So by banning gender affirming care, you're putting kids back into the group who might be faced with the choice in their mind to either go back to living in the wrong body or not living at all.
Yeah. And today, one of the representatives, and I forget his name, thankfully, probably, he said that one of the reasons he wanted to pass this ban was because he wanted to prevent suicide. And he cited to that very small percentage of children, and I don't want to, denigrate anybody that, has suicidal thoughts or anything, but the idea that there are some children who transition and then still have suicidal thoughts. And he used that as proof that they're having the suicidal thoughts because they transitioned. And first off, a correlation is not causation. And second off, it absolutely ignores what you were just talking about. What about the kids that are going to be suicidal because they can't transition? But the General Assembly is very good at picking and choosing which facts they want to support their argument. If they don't agree with them, they just ignore them. If it supports their claim, then it's on the front of the Indy Star.
Right. And also my understanding is that every single professional medical association in the country is opposed to these bills. And yet it doesn't seem to make a difference.
Our General Assembly really seems to think they know better than doctors. That's a common theme we've seen over the last couple of years. I believe it was IU Health, the really the only place that does the gender affirming care here in Indiana, came and testified in favor of it. And because one of the sponsors of the bill was saying, well, this is permanent though. They can't reverse it, and a child's not in the right place in their life to make a life-changing decision. And doctors are like, no, it's not permanent. And the General Assembly just seemed to wash that aside. You know what I mean? They tell the doctors what they're supposed to believe. So you're a foster parent.
Yes. How does this affect CPS and the foster system and foster kids, and how parents can treat their kids?
So one of the aspects of one of the bills is the idea that DCS, and CPS is a division of DCS here, the Department of Child Services, they can't remove a child because the child is transgender and the parents don't agree. Now, there's two problems with that idea. First off, DCS doesn't do that. They've already come out and said, we've never done that. We never will. This all stems, there's a case in Anderson that's caught a lot of attention around here where There are other allegations of abuse and neglect. And this has been, this was published in the Indiana Court of Appeals. I'm not speculating on this. I'm telling you what our Court of Appeals found was that there was other evidence of abuse and neglect that justified the removal of the child. So first off, it's not even happening, but in Indiana, they seem to pass bills regardless of whether things are actually happening or not. But the effect is going to be, I believe, you're going to have cases where DCS, there's a child who's transgender, and they are suffering from some sort of abuse or neglect. And DCS now is going to be hesitant to remove the child because of fear of this bill and then getting the lawsuit afterwards. And I can tell you, having been a foster parent, we're pushing 5 years now. It takes a lot for a child to be removed already. So if DCS is removing a kid, usually the situation is pretty bad. So if this is going to possibly extend the amount of time a child is in an abusive or neglectful situation, I mean, that's only making things worse. And they're trying to solve a problem that just does not exist because there was one article in a newspaper somewhere.
Dale Devon, who was Heidi's opponent, said that the biggest issue in all of this is protecting the parents. And that, I think, is a very telling statement that the kids really aren't his priority. I just want to read you a quote from the testimony yesterday. A 16-year-old transgender boy said, "What you are saying with this bill is that you are okay with kids considering or actually attempting to kill themselves by targeting families and doctors who are trying to save their children's lives. We already experience so much bullying and so much discrimination simply for being who we are. We know that you're trying to eradicate us, but no matter how hard you try, we're going to be here regardless." So what's your sense of why MAGA is doing this? It doesn't make sense that they feel they're going to be harmed by somebody else's kid using a different pronoun. What do you think's going on here?
This is just a culture war. I mean, every single thing that I have heard in these past several weeks where they say, we're worried about the kid transitioning and the long-term effect. We're worried about the parents. They're reverse engineering. They're trying to find a justification for what they're doing. They want to discriminate against transgender people, period. End of story. That's it. And then they're working back from there. Why they're doing it? I'll tell you, I don't think that was that big of an issue, really. No one was really even talking about this a couple of years ago. We get in this silo where the problems don't rise up and then the right-wing media talks about it because, oh, look, our people are so angry. We do the exact opposite thing here. I actually thought it was very telling. I remember when Donald Trump was running for president in 2015 or 2016, the whole Caitlyn Jenner thing had just happened, right? And I remember him being asked, would you care what bathroom Caitlyn Jenner has to use? And Trump, not realizing this was an issue at the time, just goes, no one would care. Go wherever, right? I don't even think he cared. But then they got in and Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or whoever it was doesn't like transgender people. And so it trickled down. So why is the General Assembly doing it? They can't. I mean, there's no other real excuse. They think it's going to win them points with their voters. But even beyond that, they don't need them here. We have been so gerrymandered that they could pass a law protecting transgender kids or a law discriminating against transgender kids and probably have the same results at the ballot. I believe that the discrimination is the goal. I think the same reason they want to ban certain types of speech, they just want to create this world like they think it was in the 1950s. They think, oh, it was so great. We were just white people. We're just so happy everywhere. And you're like, I don't think they've actually they know what happened in the 1950s. Like, I think they
No.
watched Andy Griffith and they're like, oh, that's how everything went. You know what I mean? And so it's one thing after the other. Last year, they really went after teachers and women. This year, they've decided transgender children are their victims this year. And next year will be something different. They're just going to go across the line, and anything they slightly disagree with, they're going to attack in a full frontal war.
Right, because once they split people off, it's like culling the herd a little bit.
Yeah.
Once you get people fighting each other, then they're not noticing what power you're grabbing at the top end. They don't notice the grift. They don't notice that the ultra wealthy mega donors are getting wealthier while the line workers are not. I think it's a distraction technique. But they do something that I think we should take note of, which is they decide where they want people to go. Mm-hmm. They decide where they want public opinion, and they lead people there.
Yeah.
As opposed to Democrats,
yes,
who want to find out what's popular and then talk about it. Right. So I think we could learn a lesson from that, and being out in front, like what you were saying before about being out and proud about being Democrats. Mm-hmm. Let's be out and proud about our values, so that, and lead with our values, because the country, regardless of what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying about a divorce, the country agrees with us.
Yeah.
Right? So
don't even get me started, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She called non-biological parents fake parents in an interview. As a foster parent, that was like the most offensive thing I've ever heard. I could tell you I love my children as much as if they had been biologically mine. You know what I mean? And
of course,
just her suggestion, she's just insane. I can't. she's if I had a list of people that say things that harm the country, she's number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And her.
Right.
But to your point, yeah. And what is interesting about the way the Republicans kind of lead their people in that, like, I see it so often in people I'm around. And I mean this more like when I was out canvassing and I was talking to people, is they weren't angry about an issue until they heard about it on Fox News, and now they're angry about an issue. And so one of the things that, and this is, I feel like this is one of the top things that whoever figures this out for Democrats, you're going to do very well as a messenger somewhere. The difference is Republicans make everything a fear-based tactic for that person, right? They don't just say, well, transgender people are a problem. They say, no, your kid is going to lose a spot on a basketball team because of transgender. Right. They don't talk about immigration, and that it might, no, they say immigration is going to cost you your job. Immigration is going to cause fentanyl to be ingested by your child. Everything, they boil it down to a scare tactic for you, right? And so a lot of that with Democrats, we're doing the exact opposite. Like with this transgender stuff, we may not have anyone in our immediate life who is transgender, but we're saying, no, this is the right thing to do for these other people. Right. And so for a lot of people, I noticed this a lot as I went door to door. It's not that a lot of people are well educated on these issues and they just choose that way. Most people don't pay attention to politics. As much as all this stuff is driving us crazy, what's happening in the General Assembly right now, the average person is not seeing it. So they don't start paying attention until election time. And now they see some commercials and they start paying attention. And well, everything the Republicans are saying is going to affect me personally. If I don't vote for them, my kid is going to get screwed over. I'm going to be in danger. And the Democrats, in contrast, are saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't discriminate against people. And so the person sees it as, well, I can do something that benefits me or something that benefits someone else. And I know it's way more complex and nuanced than that, but I think some of that gets down. That's the difference, and people vote how they feel.
Absolutely.
That's the difference. One side, when they catch the commercials, it makes them feel in fear of something. And the other side, they're like, well, I agree with them. I don't want people to be discriminated against, but I'm more worried about this stuff happening to me.
Right. Although, as I understand it, Republicans or extreme MAGA types are motivated by fear, whereas Democrats aren't. But the point that we don't nobody votes on policy. Right. It's just, they don't vote on policy. They don't vote on data points. They don't vote on the economy. It's too abstract a concept. They don't even vote on democracy. So we have to make everything that we say consistent. It's like trans kids. If they're consistent, persistent, and insistent, you know that they're really serious. And so we need to be insistent, consistent, and persistent about telling people how what we have done affects their lives positively.
Yeah.
And what we will do will affect their lives. And how what the Republicans, the MAGAs, have done has actually hurt them in their lives. We don't do a very good job of that. And we also don't do a very good job of everybody staying on the same message.
Let me tell you one thing I really noticed too. So we knocked over 5,000 doors. We talked to a few people, right? First off, I should point out that there is a very big difference between the MAGA and the like moderate Republicans here. And I think this is the way it is across the country, though. The MAGA Republicans are driving the messaging. And so then it trickles down. I actually don't think the majority of Republicans are okay with all of this crazy stuff, but when it boils down to it, it's that or vote for a Democrat, and they keep choosing to vote for, a Republican. So that is unfortunate, to say the least.
Right. Well, we've heard from a former Republican who says that we need to start calling the real crazies just MAGA and stop using Republican and give people a permission structure to separate from the MAGA extremes. And that if they're like the not crazy type, if we focus our ire on the MAGAs, then they can say, oh, well, I'm not MAGA, so I can go with these guys, the Democrats, because they're not, denigrating me as a run-of-the-mill Republican.
Yeah, but what we also have to do, and this was the thing that really caught. So I spent a lot of time in Tipton. My wife and I knocked a lot of doors in Tipton, which, although they're a red area, they have both a Democrat elected for mayor and for sheriff. So that is like example, 1A of how personal relationships can overcome the partisan thing. Because what happens is, so like we're saying, well, we need to make them understand that there's a difference between the crazy MAGA people and the regular Republicans. But the problem is so many of these people think that Democrats are the crazy ones because the only exposure they have to Democrats is the view of Fox News, right? And we know Fox News will find the craziest Democrat and play it all day long and make it look like we're all crazy. And that is why we discussed earlier why Democrats need to be more loud and proud about it. Because what kept happening over and over again, they would say something like, "Oh, I thought you guys were all just like bad people, but you're a foster parent, so you can't be a bad person." And I was like, we're not all bad people. And they're like, "Oh, I'd vote for more Democrats if they were like you." And I'm like, I'm a pretty normal Democrat. This is what most of us are. But when they're not confronted with just a real person saying, I'm a Democrat, that vacuum of what they believe a Democrat to be is completely filled with Fox News. I swear to God, every person that opened the door had Fox News on the TV. So to them, that's their only exposure. So in addition to messaging, in addition to working hard, some of it's just us being visible in our communities.
That's right.
Letting people know, hey, we just have different policies. We're not the crazy thing that you see on TV. and that is created. I mean, President Obama said that. He said, if I just watch Fox News all the time, I'd probably think I'm pretty terrible too.
Right, exactly. Well, which is why it's so important that we're out there engaging. Well, we need to be out there engaging all the time. And why a blue Indiana would be so great is if we can give a candidate in every single legislative race enough money to be able to knock on the doors and get out a mailer or some yard signs, then it's the door knocks. It's the actual talking to people that you know. It's the giving them a real face instead of, Tucker Carlson's view of who we are. I mean, they live in a completely different ecosystem. That's why it's so hard to even come to the same conclusion of what is actually a fact.
Mm.
We all laugh at this alternative facts that Kellyanne Conway came up with, but they live in an alternate universe. It's never the twain shall meet in terms of what they believe versus what really is going on.
One of the best examples I can give you is when I would bring up, if ever the conversation led to it, one of the most damning things to me of Trump's whole presidency, and it's a high bar to figure what, but was the good people on both sides, right? The suggestion that a neo-Nazi can be a good person is just wrong, period, right? And when people would talk about, oh, you Democrats are the hateful ones, you're the ones causing all the problems, and I'd point that out. And so many Republicans hadn't even heard of that, right? Even when there's a blatant look, everyone, the man behind the curtain, there it is. They don't hear it. It's not in front of them, and so they don't ever have to. Our biggest local news radio station is right wing as Fox News is, and that's supposed to be the straight news, and so people watch it and listen to it thinking they're getting news, and only Democrats are terrible, right? Fox News is on. If you go into any business in Indiana, Fox News is playing, and what Republicans have been able to do here is completely insulate themselves from any type of responsibility for anything that's gone bad. I mean, it's the craziest thing. I was out I was in Kokomo, Republican city council, Republican mayor, all this stuff. And they'd say, well, I'm worried about crime because of the Democratic policies. I'd say, you guys have a Republican state, General Assembly, governor, attorney general. You have a Republican city council. You have a Republican mayor. Where are these Democratic policies? Oh, well, it must be Joe Biden. Wait, what? In Indianapolis, if there's anything that goes wrong, it's not because of the General Assembly. It's because of the Indianapolis Democratic mayor. They, through their media, 100% insulate themselves from any accountability or responsibility for anything that's wrong and push everything off to Democrats. It doesn't matter. You could have the dog catcher as the only Democrat in the state. You better believe the WIBC, our radio station, is going to point to that dog catcher as the reason why that there was a rise in crime the next year. It's amazing.
Well, it's the media. It's the fact that they have figured out how to suppress the vote, both by actually kicking people off of the rolls and making them think that their voice doesn't matter because it hasn't seemed to. Yeah. So between suppressing the vote and creating districts where they have a structural advantage, they do get to do whatever they want without any accountability.
They do. And I'll tell you the actual suppression and the actual gerrymandering are not even as effective as the belief that it's created. Right. Our turnout is always so low in Indiana that even in some of these gerrymandered districts, if everyone, an extra 10% of voters said, you know what, we're not going to let this happen anymore, and they vote Democrat, we could win races that are very red because Indiana has a horrible turnout problem.
Right.
But they have been conditioned to believe their vote doesn't matter.
Yes.
And I understand why that one vote may feel that way. But if a whole group of you voted, that could change something. But I'm telling you, over and over and over again, I heard that at door after door, especially with the young people.
Right.
They hear so much, your vote doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. And so they don't vote. They don't vote, but then they also don't tell their friends to vote.
Right. Exactly.
They don't tell their brother to vote, their sister to vote, whoever. And it just trickles down and they feel defeated. And that's having just as much effect as, the actual suppression that they do.
And that's the plan.
Yeah.
So besides the anti-trans, anti-LGBT abortion ban, what else is going on in the State House? Is there other crazy stuff that people should be aware of that they either see in Indiana or if they're living somewhere else that they might see in their other MAGA-controlled state?
Yeah, so a lot of times in Indiana, if we're passing something, that means it happened somewhere else. They went and got it from, I would assume listeners of this podcast are aware of ALEC.
Yes.
But we usually get to things a few years later. And one of the big ones, I believe Texas has already passed it, and then some other red states, they're voting to ban ESG investing. So for people that don't know, that's environmental, social, and government investing. And it's the idea that some firms invest the money based on, is this place have a good environmental impact? Are they, socially responsible? They have diversity policies at their work, so on and so forth, right? And so we have our pension system for state employees, and the House here tried to pass a bill that would have banned ESG investing. The problem with that, twofold, what I said earlier, the pension system doesn't intentionally invest in ESG, right? So they're, again, creating an issue that's not even there. But two, it actually would have cost the state's pension fund $6.7 billion. Because guess what? ESG investing works. They wanted to cost the pension system $6.7 billion just out of spite, just out of culture wars, just to show you, no, we're not going to support any environmental company. So when they realized this, they made some amendments to it and changed it and exempted private pension or private investing. So only some groups are banned from doing this, and it gets really into technical details. But their whole issue now is, well, now we're only costing the pension fund $550,000 to $5.5 million. I've seen it different places. And they're acting like that's okay. Like there was nothing wrong. There was no reason to do this. They're just wanting to prove another cultural point. Nope, we're not going to support a company that's environmentally friendly. We're not going to support a company that has a diversity requirement, that they're going to cost the pension fund $500,000 or more just so they can feel better about their culture wars. And they claim to be the party that's for free markets. And they're literally taking a loss on the free market effect just to prove a cultural point. And so it's just one thing after the other. I feel like outside of Indiana, that may not sound like that's that big of a deal because it's not the pension fund for anywhere else. But that is the perfect symbol of almost every legislation that's going here. What is best for Indiana is not what their concern is. It's what's best for what Tucker Carlson said on TV last night.
Right. So that's pretty depressing. Is there anything uplifting you can tell us about what's going on, even how Alexis is doing in her race? What are you finding at the doors? Let's leave this with on a good note. So give me something to smile about.
Actually, I do have to give credit where credit's due. There have been two good things that have come out of the General Assembly. There's been a shocking movement on mental health investment. So we've seen some of that breakthrough, and a lot of that our Representative Victoria Garcia Wilburn, who got elected, a Democrat, she's really taken the lead on that. So that's been great.
Fantastic.
And we had our first hearing on decriminalizing marijuana, which is the first time it's ever happened in Indiana. So we're getting somewhere. As far as what's happening here in Westfield, I can tell you Alexis is having a great result so far. And one of the reasons is people know her. She is born and raised in Westfield. She's either played sports with or coached the kids of so many people here. And it's exactly what we talked about. It challenges people's views that Democrats are just some terrible people running these. I don't even know what they think anymore, but like they know, like, oh, wait, Alexis is a really good person. She's a foster mom. She coached my kids. Like, I know her. I like her. And she's a Democrat, and it just challenges it. And so that's what we're seeing is it. We've had several Republicans tell us, yeah, we'll vote for you. Right. And so it's just going to show that when we put candidates forward that can make connections with people, it does break that barrier down. That's why I may be one of the only people that did this. I came out of 2022 more optimistic than I went into it. And that's why it's so important that we start running candidates at all levels everywhere. Because even if it doesn't win that election that time, it's the effect. We continually challenge their belief and that we're showing them that Democrats are good people and that we have good policies that will make their lives better. And maybe meeting one candidate doesn't change their mind completely. But then the next time they meet another candidate, and then the next time they meet another candidate. And we're going to break through. We really will. And I think Alexis is able to build off of what I did. I mean, her district was included in my district when I ran for state senate. And then hopefully whoever runs after Alexis will have built on that. And that's why Democrats all across Indiana, if you hear this, run. Or help somebody that's running. Everywhere, every time. We got to do it.
Or convince somebody to run.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. One of the problems with all of these seats that go uncontested is that people aren't willing to run. And that's why we, as Hoosier Victory Alliance, are really trying to make it possible for people to run and contest every seat. So if you're out there listening, please donate a small amount on a recurring basis so that we can give it to candidates so that they can get out there and knock on doors and change the perception and ultimately, eventually, win. Well, thank you so much, Josh. It was really great to talk to you. And you make me optimistic. So I want to thank you for that. Is there anything you want to leave as a last thing?
Let me first just say, to anybody out there thinking about running, it's way more fun than you think. I had a blast. I understand some people, I think if you're an extrovert or even if you're not an extrovert, like I'm telling you, seeing someone's face when they realize that you're really trying to make a difference, it's a feeling you can't, nothing else makes up for that. But the other thing, everybody, this is not an off year. I know people think, oh, presidential's next year. We had midterm last year. Municipals matter very much. Municipals probably affect your life more on a daily basis than, who's the president. So make sure you pay attention. You get out and work just as hard for that as you would for anything else.
And that is some good advice there. Well, thank you so much and talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to our conversation with Josh Lowry. Next week, we'll feature a conversation with Kim Allen, founder of Power the Vote and Blue Texas, who will talk to us about the Texas implementation of the crowdfunding project we're starting in Indiana and the importance of voter protection, accurate vote counting, and proper certification in Texas, Indiana, and everywhere else. Please send in questions for Kim to WTG@HoosierVictoryAlliance.org. Also, as you know, we're working toward building Blue Indiana and ask that you make a small recurring donation at HoosierVictoryAlliance.org. If you like what you heard today, in the words of Gen Z, smash that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We thank you, and democracy thanks you.